Yo, what's going on everybody? I'm your boy Numbskull and welcome back to the party. Before we get into this, I want to immediately apologize for the audio quality in both this video and the last one. I'm not where I want to be to record. Today I've got a trip report submitted by a subscriber going by the name of Isaac that I'm going to read to you all. This one is none too long as well, so I won't be keeping you guys forever this time. He had quite the interesting experience with Δ⁹-THCP that I for one think is going to make a fantastic report. A special thank you to him for sending it in. As always, I'm for the most part going to be reading it exactly as he's written it, and I do hope you all enjoy your stay. Let's dive in. The drugs taken were 2.5 milligrams THCP, which was 97% D9-THCP and 3% D8-THCP by weight. I acquired substantial quantity of THCP distillate from a trusted source. Obviously, I was really interested in 33 times stronger binding affinity. I was also excited because depending on the actual psychoactive potency, the amount I bought may constitute a lifetime supply. I did a lot of research into the dosage. The standard advice online was that it would be, effectively feel twice as strong as normal Δ⁹-THCP. My standard D9-THC edible dose is 10 milligrams, and at the time I had built up my tolerance to where I was taking 20 plus milligram doses. Given that I figured, 5 milligrams would be a reasonable dose. However, in the week leading up to the THCP's arrival, I became increasingly concerned with the numerous accounts of long-term psychological damage from reasonable sounding doses, 5 to 10 milligrams. I scoured the internet for every account I could, trying to find someone who had a similar edible tolerance to me. Fortunately, I found a comment from someone with a similar edible tolerance that said they felt 2.5 milligrams 24 hours later. I decided to go ahead with that dose, figuring I could take more after 12 hours if the effects were weaker than anticipated. I dissolved some of the distillate in avocado oil with a target concentration of 10 milligrams to the milliliter. I ingested a quarter of a milliliter of the solution on some toast between 3:30 and 4 p.m. on a Friday. I began feeling effects less than 30 minutes after ingesting. It started as more of a head high that I could manage while around family, but by the 1 hour mark my sense of time started to slow and movements took more focus. I retreated up to my room. As the high grew in intensity, I became fascinated by my own reflection. As I leaned in close to the mirror, I noticed that the lens could act as a mirror too. This allowed me to set up a set of infinity mirrors with my eyeball itself as one of the mirrors. At the time I felt like the real me was the one 4 reflections deep. I waved to the other reflections, and I began seeing faces in the objects around me. I took a picture of the windows in my room, which felt like a set of eyes staring into my soul. I spent some time sitting on the floor meditating until around 8 when it felt like I was coming down. I hopped in bed figuring I'd get some sleep and see if I was still high when I woke up. By 8:30, the high was more intense than anything I had experienced on normal D9 edibles, which had included 4 to 6 hour greenouts. From there on out, the high would hit in 1 to 2 hour waves of high intensity divided by short 5 to 15 minute breaks of near sobriety, which I would spend comforting myself and bracing for the next wave. The intensity of the waves was highly unpredictable. An intense wave would be followed by a more mild wave, which would be followed up by a wave more intense than the previous two combined. Even during the less intense waves, I was too high to even listen to music, and while I found what I was going through fascinating, most of the time it felt miserable. It felt like I was hearing a buzzing sound that consisted of every possible note that got louder and quieter with the peaks and valleys of the waves. I was growing more and more concerned about depersonalization after the high, but I intentionally didn't dwell on those concerns, figuring that doing so wouldn't help my odds at sanity. The peak came between 2 and 3 a.m. It felt like my consciousness left my body, went through the bright portal, and entered some dark void where I made contact with some extremely powerful mind, or collection of minds, I couldn't tell which. The buzzing sound completely ceased, and I felt vividly sober. I couldn't figure out what the mind or minds were/was, but I could sense that it wasn't malicious and that it was aware of and mildly amused by my current predicament. It asked me what I was doing there. I said I wasn't sure. It asked if there was something it could do for me. I sighed, as I was mentally exhausted, but I really didn't want to waste this chance that I might never get again. I told the mind that I wanted to understand the nature of reality. The mind/minds asked if I was sure, and warned me that it would be quite intense. I really didn't want to say yes. At this point, I just wanted to sleep, but I knew that it was the right thing to do, so I told the minds to go ahead. The minds obliged. Next thing I knew, I was back in bed, but it wasn't the same. The buzzing I heard earlier was completely gone, and everything was in black and white. There were a few brief seconds of calm where I braced myself for what was coming next. What followed was one of the top 5 most memorable experiences of my life. Words truly can't describe it, but I'll do my best. My vision went from black and white to a flurry of greens and reds. The buzzing from earlier came back, definitely loud, with a much lower pitch. Everything looked, felt, and sounded like it was pulsing. There was no distinction between my body, the bed, the room, and the universe. I held up my hand and watched it pulse and sync with the ceiling. Everything visually was made out of the same ribbons of mostly greens and reds, including my hand, but I could make out the outline of the hand based on the orientation and distance from my perspective. I was in this state for what felt like 3 minutes, vibing harder than I should be. It felt like the biggest adrenaline rush of my life paired with the biggest mushroom dose of my life. Then, in an instant, everything was back to normal. I sat up making whatever you call that noise between a yell, a sigh, and a laugh, dripping in sweat with my heart beating out of my chest. I took a few deep breaths to calm myself before laying down to finally fall asleep. I woke up still greened out. It was dark out. I wondered whether I had slept through an entire day. To my dismay, it was only 4:30 a.m. I spent the next 12 hours in bed, still stoned out of my mind. I tried to get bits of sleep between the short waves of being too high to do so. I watched the entire new season of Rick and Morty to just try to distract myself from the high. The waves slowly subsided. By around 1, I was no longer greened out. I could understand about half of Rick and Morty. And by 3, I was finally sober enough to hang around the family again. By 5:30 and 6, I finally got sober again. That night I took a 5 mg standard D⁹-THC edible to help me unwind, distress, and take my mind off what I had just experienced. I went to bed early and didn't wake up until afternoon on Sunday. And that is going to be the end of the report. And he has also included a section down here regarding the exact numbers we're dealing with here, a few pieces of key information about the experience, and some personal afterthoughts. I took the 2.5 mg dose between 3:30 and 4 on Friday, greened out from 9 p.m. Friday night to 1 p.m. Saturday morning, 16 hours, peaking around 2:30 a.m. Friday morning. I sobered up between 5:30 and 6 p.m. on Saturday, a full 26 hours after I took the dose. I estimate I got about 4 hours of sleep over the course of the trip. I never slept more than 90 minutes consecutively, and most of it was after 1 p.m. on Saturday. I had noticeable brain fog for the next week. I've only taken THCP one time since, a 0.5 mg dose a few days later. The high still lasted 24 hours, but it was much less intense and I could actually sleep on it. I will likely try a 1 to 1.5 mg dose in the near future, hoping to find that sweet spot. I also have HHCP in my possession and am excited to see how it compares. I recommend that most people stay the fuck away from THCP for recreational use. You likely shouldn't even consider it unless you're a psychonaut, seasoned cannabis user, and have got some sort of a chemistry background. I consider it around 15 times stronger than normal D⁹-THC. I ended up being mentally back to normal after a few days, but I think the risk of psychosis is way higher than other popular cannabinoids. As with many other psychoactive substances, set and setting are absolutely crucial to reduce the odds of things going too wrong. It was a remarkable experience, but I'm not sure if I'd ever take more than 2 mg again. And that, dicks and bitches, is going to be wrapping things up. The experience he had here is a very good representation of how intense things can get when messing with some of these alt cannabinoids. I mean, Δ⁹-THC honestly has nothing on a few of them. I've got some more reports coming on some of them, including a few directly from yours truly, so pop those post notifications on if you don't want to miss out on any of that. And to Isaac, I did enjoy this report a lot, and I do encourage and hope you send in some, more like you mentioned. An Amanita one would be particularly nice. I love hallucinogenic GABAergics. They're quite novel and very unique substances, and it's one of my favorites within that category. If you write some more out, do send them in. Again, I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, a like and subscribe, or follow if you're viewing from TikTok, would be extremely appreciated. Comments also keep my motivation up too, so tell me some stories or let me know what you thought about the report, or the video in general. I swear I'm going to OD on dopamine with some of the stuff you all leave in the comments on these videos, and I do thank everyone for the support. I have no plans to stop uploading. This is just the beginning, and I'm glad we can all be here for the ride together. Now I am fiending, and after I hit upload, I'm going straight to the dispensary, coming home with my acquired bounty and popping 6 grams of red Mang Da. So with that, I will see all of you in the next one. Peace!